Welcome everyone to another episode of the Hector Mike Experience, Common Sense in an Uncommon World. And Mike, a lot of uncommon stuff happening in this world here, especially here in California. You've got California Governor Gavin Newsom, who has decided that he's going to have California cut ties with Walgreens. And I see in your little description, you are the Walgreens cosmetic expert. So
I can get you some bronzer for that forehead, Hector, if you need it.
I need it. I do need it.
We have a special on that today, 2 for 1. So I'll get one too.
Yeah. So what is going on, Mike? It seems as though, you've got a lot of states that, what's it, about 20 states that have indicated that they are putting limitations on utilizing certain types of medication, over-the-counter medication or prescription medication for abortions. And obviously California not being one of them. And then you've got the governor here of California that has basically said, Walgreens, if you're going to succumb to what that state law says or what the attorney generals are saying in those particular states, then we're not going to do any business with you.
Mm-hmm. It's the person celebrating all of this today is Gavin Newsom. And the reason is it was a huge subject yesterday on The View. And that's his perfect demographic that he's trying to reach as he plans to run for president of the United States. And so it worked. I mean, it's a short-sighted, grandstanding kind of policy. The reality is attorney generals in 20 states have sent out notices that there are certain certifications that drug companies, drugstores need to have in order to dispense this pill. I forgot the name of it, but it's basically the morning after pill kind of thing. And, the drugstores like one of them anyway, Walgreens has said, well, we're going to wait until we get that appropriate certification before we continue selling the pill. And, that just became something that Gavin decided to, and smartly to trumpet, because it reaches the exact audience that he wants to reach. He doesn't care about whether or not it actually makes a difference. And that was one of the funniest things I saw on The View. Yes, I did watch a little bit of it. God forgive me. And it's Lent, so I'm really going to hell now that I watched The View. But one of the, Whoopi was going at it with somebody, and one of the other hostesses said something to the effect of, maybe he can force change. And that's when I completely lost it and was on the ground laughing, because he's not interested in forcing anything related to policy change. He's interested in connecting with a constituency and an audience on a national level that raises him up and gives him a niche and puts him out front on issues like this, which play well within the Democratic primary circuit. And of course, to us here, if you're a senior citizen who goes to their local Walgreens because it's close in their neighborhood, you get your medication there for, even if you're not a senior, and, you rely on them to make sure you're getting the right medication, doesn't have interactions with other drugs, things like that. So basically he's saying, we're not going to do business with this company anymore. Well, the only person it hurts are the people that use the services now. And as you said, ironically enough, none of this has anything to do with California, because California is not one of those 20 states.
Yeah, so but what does it also do to, I mean, I've got to assume that you've got CVS and you've got all these other pharmacies, that are multiple states, that if the state law prohibits you from doing something in that particular state, you kind of got to follow that state law in order to remain operational there, whether it's getting the certificate, whether it's not providing certain types of medication that, that maybe in other states it's legal, but in other states are not. I mean, you when we were kids, you heard about Everclear and how, it was legal in certain states, but not in other states.
Right.
There's certain things that you can, that you can buy in certain places that you can't buy in other places. And so each one of these companies is going to have to figure out what those laws are in that particular state and apply them. And so I'm in agreement with you that this is about whether it's right or wrong. It's about a political play, which.
Well, let's switch it around a little bit. So let's take this conversation to Florida. So, what would happen? What would happen to Gavin Newsom if Ron DeSantis decides that Florida will not do business with a company in California because he doesn't like a particular law that is being followed in California? And remember, I mean, all these drugstores are trying to do is like stay on the right side of the law. I mean, so that's the first thing. And so you have someone from another state telling you that you're an extremist and you're cowering to the right wing because you're paying attention to an advisory opinion that has been sent to you by a state attorney general. Well, I mean, can you imagine if that happened here? That the shoe on the other foot. It has nothing to do with making sure that people are able to get this hill if needed or they want it. It has everything to do with him staking out that territory in the Democrat primary ground. And it really does. The people that get hurt by Walgreens, that maybe, they're not able to get a particular drug, or, what if their health care is through the state of California, either as an employee, as a retiree, or on Medicaid for Californians that can't afford health insurance. Now they can't do business with Walgreens, according to Gavin Newsom. So now they either have to pay the going rate for whatever their drug is, or they have to go someplace else. The inconvenience and the trouble is to the consumer that is covered by California healthcare, whether, again, you're a state worker or a retiree or on CalMed, I guess it is. They're the ones that are inconvenienced and put out by this. And, I could tell you, as someone that doesn't take a lot of meds, but take some, I mean, I'm go to a certain place because I have a real comfort level that the pharmacists know me and what I'm taking and everything else. That makes a big difference to people. And so the only people he's hurting here, he's not hurting the stockholders of Walgreens. I mean, people are still going to be going into Walgreens to buy everything from cereal to Rogaine. Well,
yes, I know.
We have a sale on that too, 2 for 1.
But
I know
it sounds like the similar. I mean, California has, with its attorney generals, when was it Javier Becerra was there with Jerry Brown, and now Brabant is there with Gavin Newsom. We had all these bans, and we still have these bans. I think we're not allowed to use state money to go travel to 23 states because they have certain laws that the attorney general and the governor's office deems are anti-LGBTQ plus.
Right.
But yet you still have the sporting teams from the University of California that use state money. You still have the governor himself who goes out and vacations in some of these, has vacation in at least in one of these states. Right. Yeah. And you still have members of the legislature or, who could go out and go to these places. And so it seems as though a lot of it is just to make headlines. And, something you and I have discussed is, and I think that's important, is that all this noise is for one particular purpose: is, can I increase my name ID? Can I go out there and meet that constituent? Can I go out and find individuals in all these other states that will kind of put my name in front of them so that they get to know who I am? We can kind of agree on some of these issues because it is going to be about trying to get through a primary should Joe Biden decide not to run for president for a second term.
Right. It's hypocrisy is really what it comes down to. I mean, you mentioned those specific cases, which is true because, our governor and our attorney general don't like the state policies in those states related to LGBTQ plus. And, so what do we do in California because of climate change and environmental justice, or whatever he's calling it these days? We don't drill for oil here. We import it. Well, where do we import it? We don't import it from Oklahoma. We import it from foreign countries. Well, who are those foreign countries? Well, one of them is a foreign country that kills people because they're gay. Oh, but that doesn't matter because the climate is more important than our policy about protecting gay people. Another one, some of the places that we import this oil from are sponsors of state terrorism.
Right. The Amazon forest is the other one. Yeah.
The Amazon forest is getting raked over because they're drilling for oil in the Amazon forest rather than, in Long Beach in the McDonald's parking lot. And, because they want to say that we don't want to drill for oil in California, but the impact or the ripple effects of that policy means that we're doing business with countries that kill people because they're gay. It's insane. We're doing business with countries that ravage the Amazon rainforest. It's crazy. We do business with countries that sponsor state terrorism against the United States. And, all of that doesn't seem to matter. That's why I think the whole thing is just so hypocritical. And his hope, and it might work, is that people won't see through that. What saddens me is we as Californians don't see through that. That's
Right.
the part that gets me sometimes, is that we as Californians don't see it as the charade that it is.
Do you think Kamala Harris has seen it for what it is,
Oh,
and her team?
oh, big time. Oh, big
Yep.
time. Yeah, look, Kamala gets up every morning and lights a candle that Joe runs and Joe wins. Because, I mean, if you go out and ask people a question, do you think Joe's going to run or not? You might have, like, on any given day, 60-40 say yes and 40% say no. If you go to the same people and you ask, do you think Joe Biden, if he runs and wins, will serve his full 4-year term in his second term? I think it's more like 99% to 1% that say he won't serve his 4 years of the second term, and the 1% is probably Joe. So she's hoping that he runs, that Joe runs, and she falls into the right place at the right time.
Well, here's the thing: is I don't, we talk to folks in the national side, and for some odd reason, they don't see Gavin as being a threat. They don't see him as being the guy who could win the primary. And I know you made the conversations. I've had those conversations. I'm like, the guy is good. The guy speaks well, can raise money. He's got a national presence. I mean, he can go on The View whenever he wants, or any of the other talk shows whenever he wants, and go out there nationally. And for some odd reason, I don't know what it is. They don't think he's got a shot.
There's a phrase I use, the Californication of America, and it's coming. I mean, the policies here in California sometimes spread on their own organically, but the bottom line is there's probably an 80 to 90% chance that in the next 4 years, 2026, 2025, 2026,
Yeah.
there will be a Californian who's president of the United States. The reality is, if it's now, in 2024, there's no one in the Democrat Party that has the same financial base, the same leftist base that Gavin has. And if it's post 2024, then it's Kamala. And so people should be looking at what goes on in California, because if a Democrat is in the White House in 2025 or 2026, it's likely going to be one of those two people.
Yeah.
And I hear the same thing. And what it reminds me of takes me back to 2016 with Trump. I remember I used to have conversations literally every week at the RNC with people, because I was at the RNC at the time. And I would say to them, this Trump thing seems to be catching on. And the first answer was, oh, it's going to fade. Don't worry. Jeb Bush is going to knock him out in the primary. And then the primary, and Jeb, falls flat on his face. And then it was Marco. Marco's going to knock him out. Once we get to Florida, Marco's going to knock him out. And then Trump wins Florida. And then it was Cruz. Ted's going to knock him out. Ted's going to knock him out. And it's like, you're missing the point here, people. You could sit in your little bubble in DC and think that's what's going on, but that's not what's going on outside of the bubble. And I think, when you look at what Gavin has in terms of political smarts, the people around him, the money he can raise, the national presence that comes with being the governor of California, and the issues that he's staking out on right now, it all fits perfectly. So, I mean, I may not like it, but I give him credit for the political smarts of it.
Yeah. And for someone who's laid the groundwork, I mean, just going out and attacking other governors, going out and doing ads in other states. I mean, that amount of not just the publicity, but also building up that email list of folks that he can go later on and tap into for money and all the other help. I mean, that can only help him in the long run. I guess the only thing real determinant that could that would stop him right now is Joe deciding to run.
Right.
You know?
And we'll know that later than sooner.
Yeah.
Not sooner than later, later than sooner.
Yeah.
With Joe. He may be the last one to know.
Well, we'll see what happens there. Let's go on to our next segment that I wanted to kind of touch on. You know, we're getting all these things about got a lot of banks that seem to be closing this Friday or seem to be shutting down this Friday. And you know, there was movement. I read a story on Bloomberg that you've got the Silicon Valley Bank that has had a run on its cash, and people pulled it out, and now it is basically done.
Right.
You know,
There's
and
two
I think you
failed
mentioned another one
financial
too. Yeah.
Silver, I think it's Silvergate Capital, located in Northern California. So two California banks today have been shuttered by the federal government because they didn't have enough to cover in their reserves. And you know, I go back to what I said a second ago about the fact that, you know, you have to look sometimes at what happens in California and the ripple effect it has over the country. And that's a real clear warning sign of possibly things to come. And basically what happens is we went through the pandemic, right?
Right.
And everybody stayed home. So you couldn't go out to eat. You weren't buying cars. You weren't, you know, the biggest thing you bought was a better computer for your Zoom. And so, you know, most of the people were saving money, put money away. They were getting great interest rates on it. And then all of a sudden, economy opens back up. There's a shortage of products, so prices go up. Shortage of manufacturing, prices go up. Shortage of American-made, more imports coming in, which is why we have the largest trade deficit in U.S. history right now. And you now add on to that, what's his name, Powell, who is raising interest rates left, hand over fist, hand over fist, hand over fist. And now people are looking at it saying, well, for me to go borrow that money that I need to do something or want to do something, or for my business or my venture capital, for me to go borrow that money, the interest rate is so high. Why would I go borrow the money when I have it sitting in my account? So I'm going to go to my account and pull it out and use it. And that's what causes a run on the banks. And that's
which is a problem you and I would never have, because we wouldn't be able to run on the banks.
I run away from the banks. That's right. They see me coming and they say, "Oh, here's that goddamn guy with the jar of pennies again. He wants me to count them up." Yeah, that's me. Not our problem. But that's something to keep definitely to keep an eye out for, because I think that's something. And of course, Powell's response to the whole thing is, well, you know, we have to cool the economy. We have to cool the economy. So he's talking about raising interest rates more. And you read the stories. I mean, how much more it costs you to buy a car. And it was costing you more to buy a car before because they didn't have the parts. They didn't have the chips and the mechanic and all of that. Now it's costing you more because of the interest rates. Housing. I mean, you know, you see people
look
paying.
at electricity. Look at electricity rates, gas rates. Right. I mean, gasoline is going back up, and at the same time, you know, I was talking to Mom earlier this morning, and you know, she's talking about, you know, you go to the grocery store. She goes, I can't get out of there without spending more than, you know, just her and Dad, more than $100 just, you know, just for food. She goes, it's crazy. She goes, for $100 before, she goes, I used to be able to fill up that shopping cart. She goes, now I just get the bottom of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's very true. It is having an impact. And I think you're going to see it start to have the impact on the banking industry, because people were used to, for quite a while, getting, you know, they'd have their money put away and they were getting a decent rate on it. And now it's completely flipped. And the price of money is so expensive that people are either retrenching, or they're going to what they had put away or stashed away during the last 2 or 3 years with the pandemic and using that. And the banks aren't getting, you know, I think that I fear, I don't, you know, I'm not an expert on banking, but I fear that what we saw in the last 24, 48 hours here in California with these two Northern California financial institutions is going to be a wave of the future.
Well, the other thing too that I find interesting is, So, we talked about everything that was going up in price, but the other thing that came out this week too is a lot of these protections for renters who are maybe behind on their rent, who at the same time we had, the COVID protections where you couldn't really evict someone. Well, all those have come and gone. And so now, what you're seeing is you're going to begin to see kind of an avalanche of evictions coming forward by people who weren't paying their rent or paid a portion of it and the state government, covered another part of it. But now that that money's kind of run out, now that the state of California is projecting about a 22 to 23 billion dollar deficit, all that money, all those protections are gone. And so I think you're gonna begin to see a lot more stories of individuals that are being evicted. You're probably gonna see movement, especially as we get it in San Francisco or maybe Los Angeles, where you're gonna get politicians that try to create band-aid type of laws to protect individuals from these evictions. But I think at the end of the day, you're gonna see a wave of evictions coming through from people. Just where do they go next?
Right. You're going to see more homelessness. And of course, we know for a fact, and the politicians know for a fact, Karen Bass knows for a fact down here in LA, homelessness is a huge issue. And what's the solution to it is, their solution to it is to have places for these people to go, to build places for them to go. Well, the price of construction is going up. The price of materials is going up. The price,
Yeah.
the price of gas. And I mean, I hear, well, we want to stop drilling for oil. Well, oil doesn't just go into gasoline for your cars. It goes into manufacturing and plastics and all of that kind of stuff, the things you need to build a house. All of that's going up, plus the interest rates. So, it's coming to become a big squeeze. You're going to have more people coming into the pipeline and probably less housing being built out of the pipeline because of the cost. And then once you build it, you got to heat it or, hopefully in a couple of months, air condition it. Maybe make sure that you have some gutters on the house because we seem to be getting rain all of a sudden. And all of that it's just not a good place right now. It really is a very tumultuous time.
It
Kind of
is,
scary.
and
Kind of scary.
no, it is, and it kind of I know that the last time we had a big crash, it was there were good times, good times, good times, and then all of a sudden, I mean, it hit all of a sudden. This seems like a slow moving train wreck.
Mhm.
It's slow, and I and it seems as though there's been a lot of movement by the federal government, a lot of movement by states and cities to prevent the inevitable, which may be a crash or maybe economy just kind of falling off the cliff for a while. But there's been a lot of band-aids, and I think that a lot of the band-aids, especially with the amount of money that was coming during COVID time, a lot of that has been drying up right now, and I think we're just going to see a greater amount of people end up in that sense of poverty.
Right. There's no doubt about it. They keep touting all the job numbers, which is wonderful, but what they don't talk about, it's funny because after the president's State of the Union message, the next day I was on a radio show in Arizona, talking about elections, and during the course of the conversation, the host asked me, "Did you watch the president's State of the Union message?" And I said, "Well, I only watched about 30 minutes of it." And he said, "Why?" I said, "Well, after 30 minutes and listening to what he was talking about, I went on orbits because I want to find this country that this guy's talking about because I'd like to go visit it because I don't know where that is." And that's a real disconnect. I mean, they come out with all of this stuff and all of these
Yeah.
wonderful things. We've got so many more people working. Well, great. They got to work to be to be able to put a roof over their head and maybe have something to eat. Forget anything else because of the cost of living going up.
Right.
Because everything costs more money because there's not enough being done because we don't have the energy to do it or we have to import the energy to do it. And it's it's I don't want to say it's a house of cards, but I think the two things today, that happened up in Northern California with the financial institutions really need to be taken very seriously. I mean, it's like two blurbs, quite honestly, on the financial stuff, but I think it's a really big sign of things to come.
Yep. Well, Mike, a lot, cosmetic work over in Mexico is big for a lot of folks who go there, and not just cosmetic work, but go get their medicine.
Right.
Individuals, I've got friends, from LA who go to Mexico to go and take their pets there to get looked over by a vet, to get medication for their pets and so forth, because it's the same medication, but it's a lot less expensive there. And you've got this group of friends that went out to Mexico from South Carolina,
Right.
and lo and behold, they cross through the border. They end up getting shot at, kidnapped, and what we know now is, two of them ended up being killed by what the cartel or everyone else is saying is mistaken identity. They thought they were Haitian drug dealers. The victims were African American,
Hmm.
and they got confused for being Haitian drug dealers, and two of them are alive, but two of them ended up dead. And the thing that really struck me this last couple of days was you got members of Congress, you've got individuals in law enforcement saying, hey, we need to bring in the FBI, we need to bring in our military to go after these cartels. You've got the president of Mexico who seems to be defending some of these cartels, and some of what they're doing. And then at the same time, you got the cartels that issue a letter of an apology and say, here are the people who are responsible for this kidnapping and for the killing. They went beyond their bounds of what we, our code, which is not not harming innocent people here,
Hmm.
you know. And so here they are. Thank you very much, and let's call it a day. It seems
So,
bizarre.
so the drug cartels have a public relations agency, and it's not
Yes.
us. Let's be clear, it's not us. But I mean, it does tell you a whole lot. I mean, they actually, as crazy as I mean, and by the way, it's amazingly tragic what happened because it was exactly what you said. They went there for medical care for one of their friends, and that happens all the time. I mean, I know people that go down for dental work and other stuff like that. Um, but they have. I mean, as crazy as it sounds, it's almost like they have a certain set of rules or codes or things like that that we may not understand, but clearly, there's some boundaries, and they were, I don't want to say smart enough, but they were savvy enough, probably that's a better word, to know that they suddenly, are being spotlighted on this thing, and so they issue an apology and they hand over the people that, overstep their bounds. Um, the real issue is the reverse, which is, the people coming the other way that, are not coming for economic reasons, but, they're bringing in things like huge crisis right now in this country is fentanyl. Well, where's
Mhm.
that coming from? It's coming from Mexico.
Not
Yeah,
not according to the president of Mexico.
well, okay. I'm I trust him. Yes,
Yeah,
trust him. Well, he must be on the same line with Joe because
yeah.
Joe doesn't think so either. But more importantly, probably the law enforcement people that have to deal with this stuff are very clear about that. So it really was one of the more, I mean, obviously sad and tragic and bizarre things because you had a drug cartel apologizing for an accidental killing, and you have the president of Mexico kind of defending them, and you still have the open border situation where all of this stuff is coming into the United States that are, I mean, fentanyl is such uh, a malicious kind of drug. I mean, that you don't even know, can be slipped into something and you don't even know you're taking it,
Right.
and can kill you. So it really highlighted, I think, an issue at the border, which I think is a fairly significant issue with a lot of people in the country. The polls that I've seen it is a significant issue with people in the country, not so much from the again the people trying to come to the country for work or better life, but the things that are coming across that are killing Americans.
Yeah, and it's kind of a difficult place for a lot of these politicians there in Mexico because of all the corruption that occurs. You've got, stories where you've got entire police departments, you've got judges, you've got,
Mhm.
members of government that are on the payroll for the cartels. And so, you have a president who came in Mexico several years ago, whose main method of trying to solve a lot of these problems is, with dialogue. Is that was his big thing is, we're going to have open dialogue on issues. We're going to include more people in what we do. And he was supposed to be seen as kind of a person who could bring people together to kind of solve some of these big problems. And what has happened is we have seen kind of the opposite hold true, where you've got a lot more killings by the cartels. You've got a lot more deaths that are happening there in Mexico. And right now, I mean, for someone whose government itself seems to be so, I mean, lack of a better word, bought up by the cartels themselves. I mean, what can he say or what can he do? Um,
Bought and
you
paid
know,
for. Bought and paid
well,
for. I mean,
well, the
yeah.
thing is, I mean, you use the military. You could use the military to go after the cartels, but I mean, the amount of bloodshed that's probably going to be in the street is probably what he's trying to outweigh. Um, and probably for him, it's maybe a decision of, do I let the cartels just kind of shoot each other up and try to leave as many quote unquote innocent people, unharmed, unlike in this particular situation,
Mhm.
or do I take the United States up on their offer and go at it? I mean, I I it's a very difficult situation. I'd love to be able to bring someone on the show who could maybe talk about that to see what are the different options available, because I don't. It's difficult to see anything positive coming out of this one way or another.
The interesting part you talk about there is the Mexican perspective.
Yeah.
I mean, from our perspective in the United States, it's the problem of a border that's too porous now, and
Yeah.
like I said, it's not just people coming in looking for work; it's people coming in with fentanyl and other kinds of illegal drugs, and the drug cartels and the forced prostitution and all of that kind of stuff that is coming across. But from their perspective, how do they solve that? I don't. I have no idea, because what you said, I think, is accurate, which is that the whole system is compromised. It's
Yeah.
permeated at different levels, and to weed all of that out, I don't know how you do that in that kind of situation, because
Yeah. And for
you're dealing with people that obviously have some kind of rules to
right.
innocents and to bystanders, but chances are pretty good you're not an innocent bystander if you're in somewhere in the system. You're
Well, at
part
the
of
same
the game.
yeah, at the same time, I mean, if you're living in some of these towns, I mean, they control it. And
Oh yeah.
so you speak up, you join the police force, you stand up for what you believe is your right, and you're getting gunned down. I mean, you're
Mhm.
getting gunned down, you're disappearing. I mean, I've had family members who have had run-ins, and as we know, I think we've talked about this before. I mean, some have disappeared
Right.
and only remains to be found later. And so it is a very difficult situation for the people there, very difficult situation for people who are trying to bring change there. And so I really don't know what the answer is, because it has been allowed for such a long time to get so corrupt, and allowed the cartels to get so embedded within all these towns and cities and government and all these institutions that are supposed to weed out this corruption. And I mean, it has become all just one piece of Mexico itself, and it's sad. I mean, it really is. And so you get a lot of people that are trying to escape it, a lot of people who are forced into it, and you get horrible
Right.
situations as what you get right now, where everyone's got a territory and everyone's fighting for more and more of that territory.
Hmm. And what you just said is absolutely right. You are in a situation. It's not like they can get on a plane and go someplace. If you're living in one of those towns, and a certain element of the cartel controls that town, you either play ball, or they're not going to put you in a U-Haul truck and move you to another town. They may put you in a U-Haul truck, but you won't be seen again.
Yeah.
So they're really stuck. They're really captured. It's either, and sometimes what happens is the flip side, which is they see no hope, and then they become part of this organization, and they do get a little bit of benefit from it that, they probably would not have had. And so that forces or brings them in even more. It's
Well,
insidious, but
yeah, it is.
I really don't know, because of the way it is, how you get out of it.
Well, and I mean, it's funny. I was talking to mom a couple of weeks ago. The cartels are also the ones who do the donations over to the church. They're the
Of
ones who
course.
who are the ones who help pay for the libraries, help pay for some of the schools, help pay for some of the other things. I mean, they're the ones who are
Hmm.
doing
They
doing
have the
some of the
money.
doing the food giveaways and stuff. And
Right.
so, it's you're kind of stuck in a sense of with you're stuck in your family, and any kids that come afterwards, they're stuck there too.
Right. It's
So,
an never ending cycle, but you're right. I mean, they're the community, and
yep.
they're the ones that have the resources. And so the people that are living there are beholden to them.
Well, it
And they're
it
not going to
tried.
move. They're
No,
not
it
going to
was
move.
tragic loss as we noted, but it'll be really interesting to see what is the United States, because you got Dan Crenshaw, congressman. You've got a
Mhm.
couple other folks too within immigration and sheriffs, here in California, who have been pretty strong in their language about what we need to do in Mexico, and how we should utilize, or see if we could utilize, our military or our other arms of government to go out and basically undo these cartels. You've got a president in Mexico who's kind of just leave it alone. It's your problem. You guys are having issues. Deal with it yourself. And it'll be interesting to see what those conversations look like, especially in the next couple of weeks.
I think the only way, and again, I don't know the politics of Mexico, but I mean, it just does strike me as someone that's been involved in politics here for a long time. This is the kind of thing where the national government would need to step in. I'm not a big fan of national, over federalization, but this is where the national government needs to step in. I don't think anybody at the local level is going to individually, or even within a certain territory, is going to be able to turn it around. It's got to be the full force of the national government. It needs to be a priority. Resources need to be put behind it. I just don't know if they can do it with the system as corrupt as it is right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
And as long as the borders remain as open as they are, especially for people that are down along the border, at any given day it can spill over.
Yeah. Well, Mike, I know you wanted to talk about water, but I got to end it here because I got to get to a
Okay.
12
All
o'clock.
right. No worries.
So, but nonetheless, I think we should be able to, let's just try to do something on Wednesday, and we can do water because there'll still be the
Still
rain,
be
and then
raining.
it'll still be raining. Good Lord.
Is it
So,
raining up there?
it was today. It was this morning, and then it stopped. And so let me pause this right here.